For our March general meeting, we are pleased to present the League of Women Voters Legislative Action Corps. They will report on the bills we followed, what happened, and future plans. As is our tradition, the League of Women Voters of Salt Lake would like to begin tonight's meeting by acknowledging that we are gathering on Indigenous land. The Salt Lake Valley has always been a gathering place for Indigenous peoples, and we acknowledge that this land, which is named for the Ute people, is the traditional and ancestral homeland of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute nations, and is a crossroads for Indigenous peoples. We pay respect to the elders past and present. We also consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that are in our history and legacy, and seek to uncover the truth. For 100 years, the League of Women Voters has been a nonpartisan, activist, grassroots organization that believes voters should play a critical role in democracy. We encouraged informed and active participation in government, work to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influence public policy through education and advocacy. Simply put, our mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. We would like to acknowledge two new individuals who have joined the League in the past month. If you are present here tonight, please stand, or if you are online, please put a note in the chat. Ashlyn Holbrook, who is a student member, and Ann Reynolds. Now a disclaimer. A recording of tonight's event will be made available to the public on the League of Women Voters of Salt Lake website and on our social media. Other recordings of this event, whether they be in person or on a computer screen, may not be used without the express written approval of the League. The League will only allow audio-visual of this event to be broadcast in its entirety, except by media reporting on the event. There will be some important League announcements at the end of this evening's program. Now, finally, we stop listening to me and we introduce our speakers. Our speakers tonight are Deborah Case, Legislative Action Corps co-chair, who will give an introduction and a closing describing the Legislative Action Corps and its work. Kathy Biele, the Utah League president, will be speaking about election and voting bills. Kate MacKay, who's our president-elect for the Utah League and present online via Zoom, will be covering government operations from the Senate. Deborah Case will also report on Health and Human Services on behalf of other Corps members who are unable to attend. And last but not least, Norma will be presenting on natural resources. After their presentation, we'll take questions from the audience. Those of you on Zoom should write your questions in the chat. We'll have closing thoughts from Deborah Case, and then the announcements I previously referenced. So with no further ado, let me turn to our first speaker, Deborah Case.
All right, thank you everyone for being here live, and for those of you at home on Zoom. So happy to be here, and I think we're all a little bit relieved to have the general session be over. And so we are very, very happy to be able to provide you guys with a little bit of a wrap up today. So my name is Deborah Case, as mentioned. Lisa Stamps and I are co-directors of the Legislative Action Corps for the LWV Utah. Okay, and so what we do is we have a great excuse me, a great group of girls. And I will say that girls because they mainly are females. We have been too, but mostly it's a group of girls that we refer to as the core of our Legislative Action Corps because they do a huge amount of work during the general session. It's a 45-day or 7-week time period where it is fast and furious at the legislative at the Capitol, actually, and we are passing lots and lots of bills. So we have different members of our group that are concentrating on different committees and following specific bills. So they are attending these meetings and they're spending their own precious time to do this. And they become sort of experts a little bit in the field on those particular topics. So we're going to cover a couple of those tonight. We can't cover everything, but we're going to cover a couple of those tonight. So these women, they definitely do some tireless work, and we have a lot of them. This is the Legislative Action Corps, I should say, is it's a branch of the League of Women's Voters of Utah. And so most of you tonight here are from the Salt Lake League. And so we also have a lot of our members from the Legislative Action Corps are members of your own Salt Lake League. We also have members from different leagues across the state. We would like to get more members, so please feel free to join. It's a hard but very, very rewarding job. So let's see. So they work, let's see, we'll do this. Oh, so yes. So these girls are taking a look at these different committees. Okay. Now they follow these and they're following those bills. They're also responsible for noting when something is coming up to a vote and when it's something that that the league is following that we find important and it's something that we need to take action on. So they take a look at this and bring that to the LAC. And then we send out those action alerts. So those action alerts, we are the ones that are sending them to you. And then it's your action that affects the legislators. So when we ask you to call them or we ask you to do something, it's your efforts that are actually making the change at the legislature. And I have to say, it is really, really thrilling to have that actually occur and to see the legislators' votes change and hopefully in the direction that we want it to be. So I want to also thank you guys, not only for seeing those action alerts, but for taking action and being part of it. So tonight we're going to have a couple different speakers. All right. We are going to have, we're going to start with our Kathy Biele, who is our president, and she's going to be doing government operations. All right. Then we're going to have Kate MacKay. She's also going to be doing government operations with Senate. She's coming in via Zoom. All right. I will be filling in for Sally doing some health and human services. I'm probably going to have the most boring since I'm covering someone else's topic, and I apologize. And then Norma, she's going to follow up and she's going to do natural resources. So here we go. I'm going to pass this on to Kathy Biele right now.
Thank you, Deborah. So as you know, we are the League of Women Voters. So voting has been front and center at this legislative session. I will say first that we're very interested in initiatives and trying to keep them as open and available to the public. So frankly, we dodged a number of bullets in this particular session. And I will go through a couple that we actually did not pass. And that is because we were there advocating against them. We actually testified twice on this first one, which is HJR 17. It's the proposal to amend the Utah Constitution. It was proposed as a kind of tax fairness issue because what they wanted to do was require 60% of the vote on an initiative before it passes if it had any tax implications. That is an almost impossible bar to pass. So what we did, and there was another bill very similar to that, and it was HB 422. And I kind of call that the trigger law to the initiative proposal. It said if the proposal goes through, then we will go ahead and vote on this for the constitutional change. Fortunately, that did not pass. But let me just tell you that with any bill at the legislature, it will come back. So even though we have dodged bullets on various voting issues this year, they will be back next year. Part of the reason this constitutional amendment didn't pass is because several of the legislators that I heard talk said that there was an exhaustion over constitutional amendments. And I believe there are two others, maybe someone else can speak to that, but there were two other constitutional amendments that we will be voting on in the November election. A couple of others that we are very happy that didn't pass. One of them was on alternative voting methods. It was HB 171. It was proposed by a freshman legislator, Katie Hall, and it was to stop the pilot program for ranked choice voting. At this point, we have more than, I think, of the 21 municipalities that have opted into ranked choice voting in a pilot program that was supposed to go till 2026. And all I can say is, do you not know the definition of pilot program? It is nothing you want to stop in the middle, because you have a pilot program so that you can develop data and therefore have facts and then vote on whether you want to keep it. Fortunately, this did not pass. And I will say it will come back again. They continue to tell us that there is confusion over ranked choice voting. We, as the league, are here to tell you we will help you if you're at all confused. We have many ways of helping you, as well as videos, and we can come and speak to you as well. There were a couple that we are not particularly interested in because they are mainly for, we're nonpartisan, and these mainly affect the Republican Party, and they are on ballot requirements. And mostly it's about signature gathering. You understand that with signature gathering, it allows candidates to go out to their constituents, gather signatures, and then get on the ballot without going to a caucus. There were many, many speakers, including the Eagle Forum, who said this was extremely important to save the caucus system, because they believe the caucus system is the heart of our voting system. We think that it's important for every voter to have a voice. That is what the league is all about, and that is what we will continue to advocate. That did not pass either. A couple that did pass that we're very happy for. One was, I don't know where it is, but it allows it allows better access for people with disabilities. There's always been a problem. If you're blind, how do you vote and maintain privacy? How do you vote, period? And so this passed, and they will be trying to figure out how to help people with disabilities. Anyway, I think that's probably all I want to talk about for now. If anyone has any other questions later, I'm happy to answer them. So now we are on to whom? Kate MacKay.
Hi. So the bill that Kathy referred to as the disability accessibility for disabled is HB 162, and that did pass and was sent on to the governor. So it tasks the election officials to make sure that those who are disabled, that accommodation is made for them. A couple of bills that didn't pass included one which was Senate Bill 1425, substitute one, had to do with making ballot a mailed ballot on election day, and that didn't pass, which is unfortunate. One bill that we did try to pay attention to was House Bill 38, 4,000 lines, trying to tweak initiative and referendum initiatives, try to clarify provisions and requirements. It was a challenging bill to read, all 4,000 lines, and it did go on to pass. The only other one that I would make mention of that we paid any attention to was House Bill 269, which had to do with election audits. And it just tasked the Office of the Legislative Attorney General, Auditor General, to conduct biennial audits of all elections. Thank you.
All right, and back on over to me. So I am going to be going over the Senate Health and Human Services for Sally. So reading from her information, one of the priorities for the league this session was to support bills that increase healthcare access for women and provide family support. Several bills we would have likely supported were never assigned to a committee and remained in rules. A few of these bills, of these issues were heard in the Senate Health and Health Services Committee. So I'm going to go over a couple of these. Here is one that we did support, but it did fail, and that is the abortion amendment with Reby. And that removes a provision requiring a physician to verify a report has been made to law enforcement before the physician performs an abortion on a woman who is pregnant as a result of a rape or incest. And so that one failed. And that was one that we had supported, but it failed. Another one that we opposed, which did pass, was abortion changes. And in this, it ends licensing for abortion clinics as of May 2nd, 2023, with all clinics to be closed by January 1st, 2024. It requires all abortions to be performed at hospitals or a clinic that is licensed and meets the definition of a hospital. Details specific conditions under which the abortion would be allowed. Addresses consequences for those performing abortions outside of the statutes. Now, this was a very important bill. It passed, although we opposed it. All right, on to some happier news. We're going to go over some that we supported that did pass. All right, modifications to postpartum Medicaid coverage, and that extends Medicaid postpartum coverage for 1 year. And we also have the past pregnant and postpartum inmate amendments, which is very important. This modifies requirements and restraints of a pregnant inmate that requires access to postpartum care and certain social services, enables the correctional, can't read that word, all right, and early childhood advisory board. So those are just a couple of the bills that we heard in Senate Health and Human Services. And so, of course, not all of the ones that we want go through, and some of them do. So, and we're on next to you, Norma.
Okay, I guess, Shauna, are you going to start the slides? Sorry. So there were lots of natural resource related bills in this session. As you may recall, last year was designated Year of Water. This year we got a whole week of water in February. That was the extent of it. Anyway, so what I'm going to talk about are bills concerning water, then air quality, wildlife, and energy. So we can go to the next slide. Sorry, there were just too many of them. I had to put them on slides, and then you can also just read along. I won't go into detail on all of them because there are, I think, 30 that I'm focused on. So I think maybe the most important bill that passed concerning water this year was SB 277, Water Conservation and Augmentation Amendments. This bill will appropriate $200 million of state and federal funds combined for optimizing agricultural water use. And as you probably know, agriculture consumes most of almost 80% of the water that we use in Utah. So if we're going to make any meaningful progress in addressing our water shortages, we have to have agriculture be a large part of that. So this is a major expenditure. It's on top of $70 million that they allocated last year. So they're getting serious about this, which is a good step. The other one that I think might have long-ranging effects is SB 34, which is Water Infrastructure Funding Study. With this bill, the Department of Natural Resources is going to conduct a study on how to fund infrastructure, treatment, and delivery systems for water, and specifically to study the use of property tax revenue for funding these projects. This has been a contentious issue over the years. There are some people that think that we're subsidizing our water rates because some of that money is coming from property taxes, and not all entities pay property taxes. There are many tax exempt organizations, and so they're able to pay less for their water than everybody else. So like I say, if this, depending on the outcome of this study, it could have a big impact on how we fund water and how our rates may change. Another one, you can see the background is the drying Great Salt Lake. So HB 513, Great Salt Lake Amendments. This bill established a salinity target for the lake. So as the water evaporates, it concentrates the salts in the lake, and at some point the life forms, thank you, life forms there can't survive if the salt gets too high. So they established a salinity target, and they defined it as the level at which brine shrimp and brine flies can survive or thrive, I should say. And it's somewhere in the range of, I don't know, 12 to 15%. And right now the lake is about 19%. So we have a ways to go. And the way to lower the salinity level is to get more fresh water to the lake. This bill also gives the Division of Forestry, Fire, and State Lands the ability to raise the causeway berm, which they did last year on an emergency basis, to prevent the really salty water in the north arm of the lake from entering the south arm and making the salinity issues worse there. They also have been given the ability to build additional berms, and as a way to sequester certain areas of the lake to keep them healthy. I think there was an article in the paper saying that this was an indication that the state was giving up on the lake, and that they're going to, just make these little puddles all over the place that can still function. But hopefully it will be an impetus to get more water to the lake and keep it sustainable. Let's see. Okay, next slide. Thanks. Another bill that was, bill, SB 92 was introduced by a new freshman senator, Jennifer Plum, and it will designate a portion of a special license plate fee to benefit the Great Salt Lake. So I don't know when, I'm not sure when it takes effect, but you can now request, or will be able to request, a special license plate that has a picture of the lake or whatever they put on it, a brine shrimp. I don't know what they'll put on it. But whatever, you can show your support for the lake and have some of that money go to getting water to the lake. So that was a feel-good bill for me. They also allocated more money for efficient water landscaping. Last year, I think it was another $5 million, and this year they're matching that. Sorry. So these are programs that are run by water conservancy districts and local water providers. Sorry, that will pay pay homeowners and to replace their turf. Okay, yeah, replace their turf and install more water efficient landscaping. So that's something you can look out for. Another bill concerning the lake is HB 491, amendments related to Great Salt Lake. This bill appropriates $10 million. I think it will go to the Great Salt Lake Trust that was established last year. And last year that trust was given $40 million to secure water rights for the lake. So here's another 10 million this year. And this bill also creates a commissioner for the lake, whose job will be to prepare and implement a strategic plan for the lake, working with government agencies and nonprofits. So that's another good thing for the lake. Another bill that I think has good implications for the lake is HB 349, water reuse project amendments. So there's a move to find as many new sources of water as possible. As you know, we're pretty much stretched to the limit right now. So one of those ideas is to take wastewater and treat it to varying levels, such that it can be used for irrigation, secondary water, and even some cities are purifying it to be used for culinary purposes. They can do that. So this bill prevents any new water reuse projects within the Great Salt Lake watershed, so that the wastewater that normally reaches the lake, which is about 10% of the inflow at this time, it will prevent that from being used for other purposes. So the lake, again, is being looked out for with that bill. Next slide. So let's see, what else do I have here? Oh, did we get the next one? Oops, I think there's one in between. Did we miss one? Oh, no. Okay, sorry, my bad. Okay, so some of the bills that failed, which could have had beneficial implications for the lake. One was a concurrent resolution regarding the elevation, an elevation target for Great Salt Lake, and that was SCR 6. Right now, the lake, I believe, is at about 4190, roughly. And this bill would have established a target of 4198 feet, which is recognized as a good level for the lake, a healthy level for the lake. And that bill was voted down in the Senate Natural Resource, Agriculture, and Environment Committee, unfortunately. I found it interesting that they were willing to pass a salinity target, but not an elevation target when they're intricately related. It really made no sense to me. But anyway, that's our legislature. And then there's HB 286, which was Great Salt Lake funding modifications. This bill never got out of Rules Committee, and it would have directed 1/16 of sales and use taxes to benefit Great Salt Lake instead of the current location to benefit the Bear River project and the Lake Powell pipeline. I thought that was a really, it would have done it for 5 years, which is, a very critical time frame for the lake. But again, that didn't get out of the Rules Committee. Another bill, HB 538, water usage amendments. This would have prohibited outdoor watering between October 1st of a year and then between October 1st and April 25th of the next year, only within the Great Salt Lake watershed. So this one got through the House, but failed in the Senate. So hopefully, like Kathy said, some of these bills will come back. I hope it's some of the good ones. But I imagine we'll get some of both. Okay, next slide. Air quality. So this was a really interesting bill, HB 220, Emissions Reductions Amendments. This bill started out in its first version as a all-encompassing air quality bill. It had a carbon tax. It had studies studies on different emissions and requirements to have plans in place to remediate those emissions. And it was really something else. It sat in the Rules Committee for quite a long time, and apparently there was a lot of discussion going on, which is good. But anyway, when it came out and got to committee, it had morphed into a study of halogens, which are compounds such as bromine and chlorine that are very reactive and contribute to PM2 pollution along the Wasatch Front. You may have seen the article in the Salt Lake Tribune earlier this year, where they claimed that bromine emissions from US magnesium could be contributing up to 25% of our fine particulate matter in our airshed. So anyway, I say this got scaled back, but the study of halogen emissions and a plan to reduce emissions did pass. So that's I think a very good thing for our airshed. Another bill that was commendable was HB 319 for a Uinta Basin air quality study or air quality research effort that's been going on. It was going to sunset maybe this year or next year, and they extended that and gave more funding for that project, $150 million for that. The other thing, SB 201, which was radon notice amendments. This started out in interim as a bill to require buyers of new homes, or not new homes, but home buyers, to receive information on the level of radon in the home that they would be purchasing. And the real estate people were not too thrilled about that. And so again, this was scaled back to allowing county treasurers to include information on the dangers of radon when they send out their tax statements. So again, it's progress, but it's small steps. Okay, next slide. Sorry, I hope I'm probably boring you all to death here. Okay, so wildlife. I'm sure you were all aware of HB 469. This started out in interim again as what's called a cleanup bill. So it basically just brought the terminology in statute to conform with all the other terminology in other statutes. It really didn't do much. And it went through both the House and the Senate, it went through the House committee, the House floor, and then it went to the Senate. It went to a Senate committee, and it was passed out. It was very non-controversial. On the second to last day of the session, an amendment or a substitute bill was offered on the Senate floor, and there was virtually no discussion. It passed almost unanimously, had to go back to the House because it had been substituted. There was no discussion in the House, and it passed. And this is the bill that allows hunting and trapping of cougars year-round. And there have been some efforts. I've gotten several emails to contact the governor. I don't know the status of this bill right now. I don't think it's been signed, but I couldn't tell you that for sure. But anyway, there are efforts to contact the governor to ask him to veto that bill. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Another bill that was kind of fun, which a lot of these bills are not fun, was HB 327. Apparently there's been a pollinator pilot program going on. And the way it was described is, you can order special seeds or seedlings from different, I don't know, I think it's maybe up through Utah State. I don't know all the particulars. But anyway, this pilot program was set to expire this year or next year, and they extended it through 2026. So I thought that was fun. And if anybody's interested in that program, I think it's run through USU, but I am not absolutely sure. But apparently you can get free seeds that will attract pollinators and seedlings for certain plants that, are hard to grow from seed. So if you're interested, follow it up. Okay, next slide. All right, so now we get to energy. And our state is schizophrenic when it comes to energy, I'm afraid. There were lots and lots of bills that support continuing the use of fossil fuels. And then there are a few that seem to want to move us in the direction of more renewable energy. So it's a constant tug of war between the two. So SB 107, which came out early in the session, the oil and gas severance tax amendments. What this bill will do is take above trend oil and severance tax, gas severance taxes. And what they do is they base it on a 5-year average. So anything that's above that 5-year average that comes in a year is now going to go into the Transportation Infrastructure Fund. And this is I don't know which substitute version of the bill this is, but in the original one, this was where the money was going to come for the road to be extended at the top of 9 Mile Canyon to allow for fossil fuel transport. So the money is going into this fund. I don't know what the constraints on the use in that fund, but my guess is it will eventually find its way to help transporting fossil fuels. I don't know where this came from, the $2 million. I know they allocated it. I don't know if it was just a appropriation request. But the state is going to spend $2 million to help Pacific Corp, which is the parent company for Rocky Mountain Power. They're going to fight the EPA over its good neighbor rule that would affect Utah's coal plants. So the requirement is to reduce nitrous oxide emissions that contribute to ozone levels in Colorado. So that they've done studies to show that our emissions from those coal plants drift into Colorado and worsen their ozone situation. So anyway, our state is going to help fight that ruling. HB 425 is, it was called Energy Security Amendments. This again is a nod to fossil fuels. It changes the requirements for closing a coal-fired power plant and promotes the use of energy sources produced within the state. And I think that can be translated into fossil fuels. I mean, we do have some renewable sources, but it seems to be the emphasis is to continue to extract and burn our fossil fuels. Here are a couple more that were aimed at the federal government. HCR 9 is a concurrent resolution concerning shutdown of Utah's power by the federal government. So it's a pushback on federal regulations that jeopardize Utah's right to, here's the key phrase, this came up in multiple bills, Utah's right to affordable, reliable, and dispatchable energy. So anything that is counter to that is verboten. That was sort of the theme of SCR 9 as well, concurrent resolution opposing efforts to weaken the economy or restrict energy supply. Again, this is geared toward fossil fuels. This is really an anti-ESG bill. For those of you familiar with ESG, it's environmental, social, and governance standards that some financial companies use as a measure for how they want to invest their money. So the state, along, and then there was a companion bill, SB 97, public contract requirements, that basically says that our state agencies cannot do business with companies or financial institutions that support ESG. So there we go. Okay, I think one more and then I'll quit. Sorry. Well, nobody else wanted to talk. So.
I have a question for you in a minute.
Okay. So there was some good news on renewable energy. And one of those was SB 125, oh no, sorry, this is the bad one. No, this is the good one. Sorry, SB. SB 125, Transportation Infrastructure Amendments. This designates the Aspire Center at Utah State University as the lead research center for planning for electrification of transportation. And they're supporting that with $2.1 million. So they're doing some pretty wild stuff up there. One of their projects is, rather than worrying about charging stations every so often, they are doing pilot projects where they're electrifying the road. So they put the charging infrastructure in the road. Pardon me? Well, I don't know about that. I would highly doubt that, but anyway, they're just doing research and seeing what's possible. But that's one of their projects that I know about. So anyway, hopefully they'll be coming up with some good ideas for electrifying our transportation system. That would be a huge step forward. And then we have HB 217, which was, this doesn't really fit in renewable energy, but just humor me. School energy and water reductions. This allows the school board to give grants for programs to reduce energy and water use. And priority will be for rural schools and those within the Great Salt Lake watershed that target outdoor watering. So again, it's an effort to help the lake. This bill was kind of interesting too. It failed in its first trip to the House Education Committee. And the reason that it failed was because it had, I think it had about a $9 million fiscal note. And so they voted it down. And I think Representative Benyon mentioned to us at one of our functions at the Capitol that, she thought it was dead because they didn't pass it. But then she said, no, I guess you can still work on these bills even though they failed in committee. So she reworked it, took out the $9 million, and it passed. And it passed both houses. All right, let's see now, HB 301. Sorry, almost done.
No.
So this is one that, again, like I say, we're a little bit schizophrenic as far as energy goes. So HB 301 is transportation tax amendments. And this bill institutes a tax of 12.5% on public EV charging. And it also decreases the gas tax from 16.5 to 14.2%. So, on the one hand, we're trying to electrify transportation. On the other hand, we're making it more expensive for people to do it, and making it less expensive to drive a gasoline car. So, I don't know. All right. Oh wait, no. Oh, bills that were defeated.
That was the last one.
I did. Okay, I'll quit. I'm done. That's fine.
No, I have a question for you though.
Okay.
Today we heard that the LDS Church has donated massive amounts. I think it's 20,000 acre feet of water or water rights to the Great Salt Lake.
Yeah, I just saw that.
Is this going to help or is it a drop in the bucket, so to speak?
Yeah, I think it said 5.7 shares. That's what I saw. I didn't see the actual volumes. But just to give you an idea, an acre foot of water is 300 and something, almost 400,000 gallons of water. So you kind of have to do the lake.
It's a lot of water.
Yeah, the lake needs a lot of water. It's it evaporates 1 million acre feet of water a year. So we have to just replace that to stay at the same level we're at. So yes, it's a help. It's a great help, but it's not going to solve the problem, I don't think.
So along those lines, I wanted to ask, I've had a few people have mentioned to me, well, right now our snowpack is 2.5 times normal. So what's that going to do? And I don't have a definitive answer to tell them. And so can you give me any sort of idea of what can I say? How will that help?
Well, it's definitely going to help. I mean,
Yes.
there's no two ways about it. They're already releasing water from some of our reservoirs in anticipation of the above average snow melt, because they have to have somewhere to keep it.
Mhm.
So a lot of that water is going directly into the lake now. So it's all good. The only thing I would sort of be a little bit reserved about is that we probably need this kind of water for 10 years in order to make up the deficits in the Colorado River Basin as well as the Great Salt Lake. So yeah, it's all good. And
The Tribune
love
had a very interesting story with graphs that shows the water over the last 40 years or so. And it's clear that you need more than 10 good years because a lot of people the Tribune's story in today's newspaper directly answers that question. But many people are, according to Ben Adams, who was the author of the report at BYU, many people remember the alluvial years where we had a lot of rain in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, and they think everything just, flows back and forth. And his point was that was an event for like a 4-year event once in 1,000 years. And you can look at the graphs in the Tribune and you see how little the snowpack this year is going to do. It gives us a little breathing room to get serious about saving the Great Salt Lake and dealing with drought.
That's great. So I have another question, but this is for Linda. I believe Deborah was talking about some of the abortion laws that came through. I am wondering how that affects, I don't know how many of you know, but the League of Women Voters has signed on to an amicus brief about to stop the trigger law from going into effect. I think also the religious communities did the same thing. I'm wondering how this law that just passed the legislature will affect those briefs.
Okay, so the law that just passed the legislature that further restricts abortion and that eliminates abortion clinics, that's not part of the current case. Okay. But probably Planned Parenthood will bring a lawsuit against those laws because it directly impacts their clients as well as Planned Parenthood. And then the question will be whether they are just going to include those claims in the existing suit or not. Certainly, those claims aren't going to be part of what's being argued in the immediate appeal. Right now, the Planned Parenthood case, the injunction that the trial court issued was appealed by the AG, and the Supreme Court accepted that appeal challenging the injunction. So that's going to be heard by the Supreme Court probably this spring or summer. And it's anybody's guess whether the Supreme Court would add in these new claims. My guess is they wouldn't. But Planned Parenthood will definitely be, suing for against these new limitations.
Okay.
So we don't have to rewrite the brief. They'll probably just take the case. The rights of a woman to obtain an abortion are more fundamental than these tinkering around the edges of, can we have abortion clinics or do we have to have abortions in hospitals? But that'll, be subject to litigation as well.
Thank you.
Do any of the other panelists have other questions for one another? Because you jumped right in.
I'm full of questions.
It's probably about time to take questions from the audience.
Well, actually, it's time for me to get to ask you some questions.
Oh,
Because I'm the moderator. So you just took over. I get to be the moderator here. So, and any of you can respond to this. It's interesting, the bills that you're reporting on. How does the Legislative Action Corps decide what bills to follow? What's the process?
Early in the session, actually before the session, we decide what our priorities are going to be. So we take approximately about 5 different items, and those are our major priorities. And then we have some secondary ones that we're following, because otherwise it is way too overwhelming. You got to realize that the general session, they number over 1,000 bills, and to track all of them and all the changes that they're going through is almost impossible. Our core group does a lot of work following what we do, but what we wind up doing is abbreviating these down into about, right now, I think this year we had around 100 or so bills, and we put those on a tracker that is available for people. And that we decide whether we oppose it, we support it, or we're watching it.
Describe how you get to this tracker. How does someone find out where this tracker is?
Oh, well, it's actually fairly easy to do. What we do is we put it on our website. So you want to go to the League of Women of Utah. And for those of you at Salt Lake, I know it can be very confusing because if you type in Salt Lake, you'll go to a different webpage. So you want to go to League of Women's Voters of Utah. And on there, we have a tab that has the tracker on it. So you can go directly there and take a look at it. So it's really informative. We all use it, and it's very helpful.
Now, based on
And I'll say that all of these actions are based on our own positions. So we don't just find an interesting bill to follow. We follow bills that are based on our core values.
And knowing that the Utah legislature often adds bills willy-nilly throughout the session, and that all of our positions are based on our pre-existing positions, can you jump in and respond to those bills that are added, or is that not doable?
Oh, yes, we're constantly looking at the bills that are being added. And so that it doesn't stop at one point. It continues on throughout the session that we're adding the bills and we're looking at them. And we are always, like Kathy says, is we're always looking at them at the point of what our position is.
And for those that might want to get involved in the future years, because it's so fulfilling, I know, dealing with the Utah legislature, do you testify before committees?
We do have people come up and testify. So we encourage everyone to come up and testify on their own, but we also do allow people to testify on behalf of the League of Women's Voters. So on our website, we also have, and that would be under the Legislative Action Corps tab, we have an area if you want to testify on behalf of the League of Women's Voters, there's a form you can fill out, and we will get back to you and allow you to testify as for the League of Women's Voters.
And
but otherwise, we do encourage it.
Do you say what you know something about, or just I'd like to be to give my testimony?
Oh, no.
If somebody is going to testify for the league, we have to see what you're going to testify about first. We did actually testify in a couple of bills. Some we weren't expecting to, but they come up and, almost
Yes.
immediately we say, well, we have a position on this. And so we repeat our position to them. It's important, as Deborah said, to have volunteers, because if you're not watching the committees, you don't know what bills are coming out.
Mhm.
And that's why we need more people. Anybody who wants to join the Legislative Action Corps should get a hold of Deborah. You can find all of this on lwvutah.org, and sign up now.
Yes, I would love to hear from you guys. I definitely would. We have a great group and we'd love to have more.
Last but not least, you alluded to action alerts.
Yes.
Now, I don't recall getting very many action alerts. So I'm wanting to know, what does one do to get action alerts, or how many does one expect of action alerts during a session?
I think that depends on the year. Now, we don't want to overwhelm people with action alerts for every little thing. So we try and make sure that it's over something that is important, that we have a strong position on, and something that hopefully we can make a difference by doing. There are some things that we have a position on, but we don't feel that it's going to make much difference, even if we took an action. So we're going to use those for special cases, I guess I should say. It's not just everything.
So does every member of the league get the action alert? You don't have to sign up
Yes.
to
They
be
go
a
to
recipient
every
of
member
action
of the league.
alerts?
Yes,
Okay.
everyone does, and it makes a difference. So that's when we have the momentum of everyone behind us, of the League of Women's Voters, approaching their legislators and letting them know how they feel about a bill, it makes a big difference.
So there aren't that many. You're selective about when you send them out, and everyone should be respond when they get one.
Well, timing is important. I mean, you don't want to
Yes.
send an action alert out it's just been announced at the House committee. Then it passes the House committee, it has to go to the Senate and blah, blah, blah. We may be sending some out for you to go and talk to the governor now that he's about to sign or not sign bills.
And that's one of the things we refer to it as fast and furious. It is, these things change. And so we might have a bill that's been sitting there, and then all of a sudden it gets a little sneaky, and we realize that, hey, they're going to be talking about this tomorrow. We need to take action now. So when you get those, please take a look, open them up, and respond.
Now, I want to ask one question that's based on something that no one's discussed. One of the concerning bills that came up, concerning to me as a lawyer, was the bill to change how the judicial selection system works. That was a surprise. It wasn't something that came out of any study committee or interim or anything. The bar took a strong position against it. Is that something that the league is had a position on, given the democracy underlying the league's positions?
I think we can find positions on most everything if you really try hard. There's not a specific position about that, but we can look into.
Okay, maybe we have some questions from the audience. We have a robust audience here. People in the audience want to walk up to one of the front mics so that people at home will hear you. Then Sean is going to let us know whether we have any questions in the queue in the chat.
I'm Kathy Fitzgerald, and I'm asking about an issue that we didn't follow especially. I don't think we have anyone regularly attending education committees, but I'm very concerned about the voucher bill. It looks to me as though they've really wrapped it up very tightly, so there are no paths for getting around it. And I also, that's what I'm wondering we can do. I need myself more explanation of what it is that we are giving in ways of vouchers. The figure $8,000 came up, and something about it going to every student. I'm hoping I misunderstood that, but I'm wondering if you can explain that a little bit, and then talk about, are there any paths?
Kathy, this will be a constitutional change. Is that correct? And this one is supposed to be a constitutional change that will tie teacher salaries to vouchers. They get, is that, they don't call them vouchers. What are they calling them?
Scholarships.
Scholarships, right.
Actually, I don't think that one is the.
That's not that
The
one.
constitutional amendment is the one that ties the food tax to.
Right, that's taking
the income, to taking the.
taking
The-
money allotted to education and spending it for something else,
Right,
which is
so they-
unconstitutional now.
Yep. Yeah, this one's done, and they had over 2/3 majority in both houses, so it's veto proof, and
So
it
we're
can't
stuck
be.
with it.
it can't be put up on as a referendum either. No, it's done.
Because of the great majority that voted to pass it.
Yep.
Okay.
I think there is a limit though on the amount for the total amount for the vouchers. Sorry, scholarships.
And is it going to individual students or families or?
This,
I think
it's not been put in effect yet, okay?
No,
It doesn't
right,
start
I know.
today. And
Uh-huh.
so how the system will work, we don't know entirely because there'll obviously have to be applications. But the individual student can get up to $8,000 to pay for going to a private school or to pay for homeschooling. And again, there's going to be regulations by the Department of Education that's going to say something about how those students are going to be selected and, going to say something about what, if anything, has to be done but it's going to be within the regulatory system.
So
It's law though.
$8,000 per year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's the maximum that an individual student, that can be
Okay.
given for an individual student scholarship.
My name is Judy Tukoff, and my question is, if you know closer, when I got the action alerts, if I know my representatives supported the position that I was supporting and we were supporting, obviously, that I don't think I need to call them because they're already supported. What other ways are there what other things can I do with an action alert?
If they actually already support it, it's also a good idea to let them know that you appreciate them supporting it. That gives them a little bit of an extra oomph to feel like, hey, look, my constituents agree with what I'm doing. So it still helps to reach out to them.
Does it help to contact anyone that isn't your representative?
It also
anything
helps
else?
to, if it's in a committee, it's also helpful to contact the other members of the committee because they're going to be the ones that are voting on it. So that is another way to do it. Yes.
If it's a bill that's going to be debated on the floor and your representative or senator is supportive, being able to say, I got 300 emails from my constituents and here's what they've said is always helpful. So, not every bill is going to be debated on the floor, but, it gives them,
Mhm.
encouragement and ammunition.
Yes.
Let me remind the people online that if you have a question, please type it in the chat and we'll be able to ask. It's Q&A. Okay, not the chat. You don't have chat. Sorry. What you've got is Q&A. So type it in the Q part of the Q&A. And we'll try to do the A part, but live. Yes,
I was gonna say the other thing.
Please go. Thank you.
or I'll just repeat what you say.
The other thing I do with the action alerts is tell other people who aren't league members.
Wonderful.
I send it to 20 people that I know appreciate it.
Wonderful. We love to hear that.
And what really irritates me is when I get this thing back, you're not one of my constituents, so I'm not going to answer your question. Ooh.
That's why it pays to be up at the Capitol too. You can say, I think I got an email from you saying that I'm not one of your constituents, but I wanted to talk to you.
In the absence of any further questions, and if we get some, let me know. I think we want to let each one of our speakers give a closing statement. Kate, MacKay, do you want to go first? Because you've been sitting there so well-behaved and quiet.
I will also admit that I'm from the Weber County League of Women Voters, so hooray for Ogden, which is why I'm Zooming. This for me was a new experience. I've never done this before, and it was a real challenge to balance my work with trying to attend the committee meetings, at least online. But I really did learn a lot, and I appreciated being part of this Legislative Action Corps, and I encourage others to join.
It's helpful to note that a lot of everything's online. I mean, you could even sometimes testify online. You don't have to go to the Capitol. You can see everything online. The one thing you've got to say for the Utah government is they're really up to snuff with respect to the electronics and the Zoom communication.
And I'll have to give us a plug on that for the Legislative Action Corps. We are doing hybrid, so we are live in the Capitol and we are on Zoom. So you do not have to come to the Capitol to be part of our meetings either. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible. So especially if you're not from Salt Lake, it can be a little bit difficult to make the journey, the trek to the Capitol. And so our meetings are online, and so are so many of the committees at the Capitol. So utilize that website that they have, le.utah.gov.
And they're recorded. So if you want to go back and research any of them, you can see them online.
Yes.
Yeah, it's true. Other closing statements from our live panelists. Not that Kate isn't live, but she's
Yeah, Kate is.
non-electronic in this room.
Kate mentioned one lengthy bill about initiatives, and I said earlier that we are watching for the initiatives. They tell us that was a cleanup bill. And it is, I agree with you, Kate, it was way too long to read. So we just took that and said, okay, it's a cleanup bill. I hope that that's all it is. That's what happened with several other bills. Certainly in voting, there were a lot of interesting bills that Salt Lake is actually doing very well. For instance, they have a bill that now requires you to cure a ballot. If your ballot was rejected, you have to tell somebody why it was rejected. Salt Lake already does that. So it's a shout out to Salt Lake's county clerk.
Got one more question from the audience before
I do
we
have a question,
close.
although we could have gone to Norma for her closing. Linda Sage, I'm the volunteer coordinator, and I am aware of people that want to join the Legislative Action Corps if they're around. But now that the session is over, the general sessions is over, what can we expect through the summer from our Legislative Action Corps?
All right, after the Fast and Furious is over, then we kind of take a short little break, but then the interim starts. So that makes it a lot easier, actually. It's a good way to get your feet wet before the general session when it's really intense. So we go and we attend the interim sessions that are usually held like once a month. So we have a meeting and we're following those. So we're getting an idea of what's coming down the pipeline, what the hot topics are, where the attention is going. And so we have a good idea of what's going to be coming down and hitting us more like in December. Now those bill folders, they open up in May, but we really don't see much of anything until about mid-December. But we're already kind of ready for it. We know what's coming. So another thing that we kind of focus in on is trying to reach out to our legislators and getting to know them a little bit. During COVID, we wound up with a little bit of a separation from a lot of people. You know, in general, we were all a little bit remote. We couldn't really get together. Now that is fading away, but we're trying to kind of recover a little bit from that. And we're trying to get a better relationship with our legislators. And that's one of those things that can really help us during the general session so that we already have a relationship with them. So those are things that we're going to be working on during the meantime. Does
So
that
you
help?
guys don't really get a break. You get a short break, but you're working all year long, right? Well,
Yes.
thank you for
You
that very
too.
much.
You too.
Yeah, I just, like I say, it was an interesting session. I think the state is definitely taking note of the emergency situation for the lake, Great Salt Lake. I would have hoped they could have done more this session, but you know, they didn't do nothing. So that's good. I am concerned though about the energy issues that I say we can't seem to figure out which way we want to go. The Our state energy policy says that we use all of the above approach. So, we have coal, we have oil, we have natural gas, we have a great potential for solar energy. We have a lot of geothermal energy sources. We have wind. Wind is pretty much everywhere. So it's hard for me as a natural resource person who's our positions are that we want to encourage renewable energy sources, and we're concerned about climate change. And so it's kind of difficult to see the legislature not be able to figure things out for the future. So that's my my take on it. But again, they did do some really good things. We can't say that it was all negative, but I would just love to see them do more along those lines.
So again, about talking to your legislators and your neighbors too. There were several bills that passed this session that were all about election security. Utah has one of the best election systems in the United States, but these are conspiracy theorists who are sure that there's somebody trying to take away our vote. These bills passed because it doesn't really matter that they passed because we're already doing the right thing. But it helps to talk to your neighbors and say, we have a good election system. Mailed ballots are secure. Just keep at them.
Okay, and on that hopeful, positive note, I will say thank you to our speakers, present and electronically present. Thank you for our guests in person and online. Everyone who found tonight's event useful. Take a few minutes to like or share our related posts on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Now, a few announcements about what's up next. Up next at unit meetings. The Night Owls meet on the fourth Monday of the month. The next meeting will be Monday, March 27th at 7:30 at the Holiday Library and on Zoom. And they will be discussing Utah gun violence, an issue of public health and safety, presented by Nancy Halden with the Gun Violence Prevention Center. The Summit Wasatch County unit meets on the last Tuesday of the month, here Tuesday, March 28th at 11 a.m. on Zoom. They will be speaking Guns in Utah, Firearm Legislation and Resident Safety, a just released study by the League of Women Voters of Utah. Study co-authors, I can't say this, I'll mess up this name, Kathryn Votaz and Tina Hose will present. The Town Club meets the first Thursday of the month, April 6th at 11 o'clock in person in the Town Club. The program is followed by an optional lunch with payment and RSVPs in advance. Please contact Kathy Biele on her email if you want to attend. Our next general meeting will be always the third Wednesday of the month, Wednesday, April 19th at 6 p.m. live and online. We will be hearing from Dr. Angela Dunn, Executive Director of Salt Lake County Health Department, and Professor Philip Singer of the University of Utah Political Science Department. They will discuss, is public health broken? What did we learn from COVID? Has politics destroyed the public health system? Will we be ready for the next pandemic or earthquake? Please join us then. And finally, Wednesday, May 17th, 6 p.m. is our general meeting, which will be a planning meeting on Zoom. All of you are invited to attend and help plan our program for next year. The general meetings, possible studies, and ideas for coordination with the State League and with the units. Thank you all very much.
said this before.
Huh?